A Converted Man here. Thanks to David John Wellman for his video responding to Wade Scott, who has a video that's called A Christian Intro into Atheism. And I'm not watching that video, but basically, I thought, why should we listen to a Christian tell us about atheism? I'm an atheist. I'll intro you into atheism. That way, you can know what it is from an actual atheist. I mean, this would be weird. Like, if I was like, hey, it's a atheist guy intro into Christianism. I don't know. I guess I could do that. But anyways, I prefer the label skeptic because it's a little bit more descriptive of me. Because I'm a skeptic, I'm also an atheist, but we'll go with atheist. So, what's atheism anyway? So, what's the deal with atheism? All those people think that there's no God? Yeah, pretty much. There's two definitions of the word. There is no God, and then there's people that don't believe in God. And the two are somewhat equal in a way, but one has the burden of proof and the other doesn't. The burden incurs if you say there is no God, then you need some sort of argumentation to show that there's reasons to think that there's no God. Whereas if you say I don't believe in God, you have no burden of proof because belief statements, whether they're positive or negative belief statements, have no burden of proof attached to them. So when a believer says they believe in any given thing, they don't need to prove it. It'd be nice if they did, but they don't have to, at least within informal and or formal logic. Okay, so when someone says that they're an atheist, they might mean that they think that there's no God, or they might mean that they don't believe in God. And it might be useful for you to ask. There's also the notion of strong and weak atheist, which refers to the position that the person is taking. A strong atheist is the one saying there's no God. A weak atheist is saying I just don't believe in God. And then there's agnostic on top of all that. And you can add agnostic in front of these words or after these words, and that changes things. And you can even be an agnostic theist, and then there's Gnostic, and then it gets complicated. And then there's also ichtheist is also out there. And then, of course, to just really mess things up, of course, the word skeptic and that label. But to be an atheist is simply to not believe in God. Now, what God do I not believe in? Well, what do you got? See, the first fundamental problem of God is that I don't really know what God is. Now, believers might insist that indeed I do know what God is, and I'm just suppressing that knowledge. But okay, if I'm suppressing the knowledge, then I still don't actually know what God is. So, what is God? What is it? It's a word, okay, spelled G-O-D, backwards it's dog. That's kind of weird, but whatever, okay. It seems like it's an abbreviation of the word good. What is it? What does it mean? Well, you could look up the definition, but who decided that that definition was correct? Well, a number of humans. So, what version of God is God? But even more complex of a question, what makes a thing a God? Does the thing have to be really, really smart? Does the thing have to be able to create a universe or create other things out of thin air by sheer force of willpower, just by desiring that things come into existence? Would that make a thing a god? Does the thing have to know everything or be everywhere or be atemporal or non-linear? What attributes must something have for that something to be a god? And are those attributes something that are assigned before we discover the God, or are assigned in order to discover God? So I'm looking for a thing that has X, Y, and Z attributes, and that thing is what I am calling God. And, well, maybe there are no things that have those attributes, so I can't find a thing called God, but why are those attributes God? Well, because I decided. It's arbitrary. I can decide on different attributes, and then whatever that is God. I can decide that the attributes of a lobster are what God is, and then God is a lobster. Because I could name a lobster God as its name as a pet, and now God exists as my pet lobster. But if I pointed to it and said, there's God, would that be God to somebody else? Or would they say, that's not God? And like, well, that's his name is God. Okay, but that's not the actual God. How do you know? So, from an outsider's perspective, the way to kind of understand what that's like, if you are a believer, if you believe in a certain type of God, maybe you believe in the Judeo-Christian God, or so that's Christ and Jehovah, Yahweh, the Holy Spirit, and all those things are God, but they're also separate because the Trinity is a thing and all that. Or maybe you believe in just the Jewish God, so you just have Jehovah, Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Or maybe you're a Muslim and you believe in Allah, or maybe you're Hindu and you have Shiva and a whole bunch of other gods that I don't know the names of. Or maybe you have some other religion and that version of God has some other name or no name at all, or what have you. In regards to the other gods out there that you don't believe exist, the way that you think about those gods is probably similar to the way that I think about all gods. So, this phrase has been said by some that atheists don't believe in the same amount of gods as believers do, but we just go one step further. And it's kind of a way to say, look, we want you to understand what it's like. Now, many believers, I will read comments and I will hear something said where they say, I am struggling with my belief, with my faith. And I say, let it go. Give up on the struggle. Why struggle to continue to fight to believe something? Why not let it go? If it's real, it shouldn't be that hard of a struggle to believe that it's real. In fact, it shouldn't be any struggle at all. But sadly, the struggle itself is codified into many religious systems as something good. That's part of the process. That's part of religion, is to struggle with God, so that you're encouraged to keep up the belief rather than to let it go. Almost every day of the week, you don't believe in God. Now, you might say that's not true if you believe in God, but if you actually look at it, how often do you participate in talking about God, or worshiping God, or celebrating God? Do you go to a church? Maybe once a week, maybe twice, but certainly not every single day. And you're not reading your holy book every single day, are you? So Are you praying every single day? Are you spending every moment dedicated to God? Probably not. I would wager that the amount of time that you spend in communion with your God is relatively low. If you were to chart it out, we would see something very interesting. In fact, that would be a challenge I would pose to the believers. Keep track of how often you are actually engaging in things about God. Now, if you do YouTube videos, it might be a little bit higher, but then we can go a little bit deeper and also include on that chart your interaction with God itself, not just speaking about God, but talking directly to God or worshiping God or singing praise songs to God or listening to praise songs about God or what have you. And just start out what that looks like throughout the week, throughout the month, perhaps throughout the year. And all those times when you're not engaged in that, that's what it's like to be an atheist to some degree. Not believing in God frees up a whole lot of time. I don't have to go to church. I don't have to pray because those things would be a waste of my time. I don't really engage in conversations with God since I don't believe that there's a God to do that with. That frees up a lot of time. Now, I do spend my time talking about God on YouTube, and I do that because it's interesting to me to do so. But you wouldn't have to do that if you didn't believe at all. You could choose not to. So, atheism is not by itself a worldview. Now, some believers will insist that it is, but they're simply wrong. It not believing in God doesn't tell you anything else about the rest of the world. It doesn't tell you what ethical system you should have or what morals you should have because of that ethical system that you select. It doesn't tell you whether or not you should agree with science. It doesn't tell you how to live your life. It doesn't tell you diddly squat. It is not a world view. It is part of one, perhaps, but it is not the whole of your worldview. And theists will say, but once you don't believe in God, then you have to believe in something that made everything. No, you don't. Because there's no prescription that atheism says you now have to believe X, Y, or Z. You don't have to believe in a darn thing if you don't want to. You can believe in anything that you want regarding the origins of humans, the earth, the universe, whatever. It's all free game, and you can believe in whatever. Or you can believe in none of it. It's up to you. You are a free thinker. You are a free agent able to determine your own course, your own destiny. You're able to forge your own journey and decide what is important to you. And every day you can change that if you so desire. What the purpose of life is, that's up to you to decide every moment. You don't have to have any particular belief regarding the afterlife. Maybe you want to believe that there is one. Maybe you want to believe there is none. Maybe you want to believe whatever. It doesn't matter. As long as you don't believe in God, you're an atheist by pure definition alone. And all you have to do to not believe in God is simply just not do it. Now, that might be difficult at first, especially if you've been indoctrinated into the belief, but there's ways to ease yourself into it. First, if you're going to church, stop going to church. If you pray every day, stop praying every day. If you are listening to worship music, listen to other music instead. If you find that you talk a lot about God, talk about other stuff instead. And eventually, over time, it will just fade out into the background. Now, maybe you will still maintain a belief in God after doing that for quite some time, but try it. Just try it and see what happens. Now, that, of course, I steal that from many theists that say the same thing about theism. They'll say, just try it. Just pray enough and try it long enough and you'll get it. But the amazing thing about not believing is once you don't believe anymore, it's like, what are you missing? Really? There really isn't anything, is there? Now, maybe you're worried that the feelings that you have, those warm and fuzzy feelings you have about God, you like those and you want those to be around. So you're like, well, I'll lose those. No, actually, you can have those. You'll just have to get new ways to get those. Performing the rituals that you used to perform may indeed invoke those emotions, or it might be that you find different rituals to invoke those emotions, or maybe you might find even more powerful emotions that you can invoke. And the amazing thing is, once you stop believing in God and realize there isn't one, you can invoke those emotions your own self and know that it was always you that was doing that. It never was God. It was always your own mind that produced those nice emotions. And now you're free to admit the reality of things. Theists have to pretend a whole lot. An atheist doesn't. I don't have to pretend anything. There's many things I don't know. There's many mysteries, sure. I don't know a lot about things, and neither do you. When somebody says that they do, well, it's okay to be a little bit skeptical of that. Can they prove it? Does it sound like they know what they're talking about? And more important than that, are they welcoming critical questions and not being evasive about them? Are they suggesting books and scientific papers, or are they just wish-washy and telling you to do your own research? I recently had a quick exchange with somebody in text where it was like, I asked what this thing was, and they said, oh, I know what it is because I talked to those people, and then I became one. And I'm like, I don't know that that's a good way to find out what something is. It's certainly a good way to indoctrinate yourself, though. Doesn't seem like you did actual critical analysis of what it was, because you don't seem to be aware of the history of it or anything else, and that's true of many religious people. Do you know how the holy book you have came to be? Who wrote it? When? Where? How it was assembled? How canon was decided? Who publishes it? If not, why not? It seems like that would be something that you should know if you believe that book is really important. So you're not really acting like it is. But to be an atheist, there isn't any book that you have to read. You can read books. You can read no books. You can listen to stuff. You can not listen to stuff. It's free market. And maybe that scares some people. They go, well, without a God, what's your moral values? Ethics? And what makes you think that God is better at it than I am? Well, because it's God. That's not a real answer, though. Why do you think that God's ethics are better than anyone else's? I can guarantee you they're worse than many ethical systems, because divine command theory, which is the ethical system that theists mostly adhere to, is flawed. You have to believe that God told you to do or not to do X, Y, and Z, and then to do those things. But why are those things bad or good? Well, because your God said that they are. But what makes them good? Are they good on their own, or are they good because God said that they're good, or some combination thereof? And if you disagree with God, but you still have to do the thing anyways, is that a decent ethic to uphold? Why do you disagree with it if it's so virtuous and holy and good? Shouldn't you agree with everything then? There's 613 commands issued by Yahweh. But Christians tend to focus on the first 10 and only one of the two sets of 10 that was given, and or they say, well, none of them matter because we only really have one, which is love everyone like you love yourself, which really isn't a good one if you examine that, because it doesn't really tell you how to love yourself, does it? So, atheists, there's many of us. Some are nice, some are mean, some are smart, some are dumb, some are this or that biological sex or this or that persuasion of sexuality or whatever, and we're all human. And we might not agree on that there's a God or not, but there's many other aspects of humanity that we can celebrate. Our differences can make us stronger. And if we're able to sit down and have a civil conversation about your beliefs and why you hold them and my non-beliefs and why I hold those, that might produce some additional thoughts for both of us. And we might benefit, or the audience might benefit from that. But what's most important is we celebrate the things that we agree upon and we work towards building a better world. Because whether there's a God or not, it seems like we are on our own to make this world a better place. That it's up to us to do God's work, because God, if it exists, doesn't seem to be doing diddly squat. It needs you to do its work. Well, how about just skipping the middleman then? Maybe we don't need God and we just do the good work ourselves. That's my intro into atheism. If you have any questions about it, let me know in the comments below. Thank you, and be skeptical. Also, join atheism because, we have cookies. I ate them all, but we did have them for a while. Maybe there's some around here I can get. I don't know where they are.